For centuries, the world moved differently. A trader could walk from one city-state to the next. A pilgrim could cross vast territories to reach a sacred site. Their passage was often secured not by a document, but by a shared language, a recognizable faith, a simple letter of introduction. Borders were porous, shifting lines on a map few had ever seen. People moved with a freedom that seems almost unimaginable today. They crossed mountains and seas carrying little more than their name and their purpose. Now consider the modern border. A traveler stands before an official. Their entire journey, their right to enter, their very future, can hinge on a small bound booklet. How did this simple collection of paper and ink accumulate such extraordinary power over human movement? In the ancient world, movement was the lifeblood of culture and commerce. Great empires were not defined by rigid patrolled borders, but by the roads that connected their territories. The Roman Empire, for instance, was a vast network of stone-paved highways stretching from Britain to the deserts of Mesopotamia. These roads were arteries of trade, communication, military power. A merchant carrying spices, a diplomat bearing a message, a scholar seeking knowledge could travel for weeks, encountering soldiers and officials, but rarely a formal border checkpoint as we know it. Their passport was often a simple letter. A powerful senator might provide a written scroll, a trattoria, requesting that officials provide a traveler with lodging and supplies. This was not a document of identity, but a letter of recommendation, a vouching of character. For merchants, a tablet showing their trade guild affiliation might suffice. For others, the right words, a shared dialect, were enough to prove they were not a threat. Pilgrims also journeyed great distances, driven by faith. A traveler, heading to the oracle at Delphi in Greece, to the temples of Egypt, might carry a simple token from their home city. It was a form of identification, but one rooted in community and belief rather than state authority. These early travelers inhabited a world where one's identity was tied to one's city, one's craft, one's god, not to a sprawling, abstract nation. Power was centered in cities and along major trade routes, while the lands in between were often wild and uncontrolled. The idea of meticulously tracking every individual crossing an invisible line in the landscape would have seemed strange and impractical. Movement was a natural state, a necessity for the flow of goods, ideas, and people that allowed civilizations to flourish. The world was open, if not always safe. As the Roman Empire faded, Europe fractured into a mosaic of smaller kingdoms, fiefdoms, and city-states. Long-distance travel became more perilous, roads fell into disrepair, and authority became intensely local. A journey that was once a straightforward passage through a single empire now involved crossing the lands of numerous feudal lords, each with their own rules, tolls, and suspicions. In this fragmented landscape, the need for official permission to travel grew more pronounced. A king might issue a document to one of his subjects, granting them permission to travel outside the kingdom and requesting safe passage from other rulers. These documents were often called letters of safe conduct. Stamped with the royal seal, they were a powerful symbol of the king's protection. They declared the bearer was under the monarch's care and that any harm done to them would be considered an affront to the crown itself. Merchants and artisans, organized into powerful guilds, also developed their own forms of travel documentation. A letter from a guild master could prove a craftsman's credentials and secure them passage and work in a foreign city. Pilgrims, too, continued their journeys to holy sites like Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago de Compostela. They often carried pilgrim badges or certificates as proof of their purpose. These items could help them gain access to special hostels and protection from religious orders along the way. These medieval documents, however, were not universal. They were issued for specific journeys and for a privileged few: diplomats, wealthy merchants, and those on official business. For the vast majority, who rarely ventured far from their village, such papers were unnecessary. Identity was still primarily local, confirmed by one's neighbors and one's lord. The idea of a universal travel document for every citizen was still centuries away. Travel was a privilege, not a right, and that privilege was granted by the powerful. The late medieval and Renaissance periods saw the gradual consolidation of power. Feudal lords gave way to centralized monarchies. The modern nation-state began to take shape. As kings and queens extended their authority over larger territories, they wanted to define and defend their realms. Cartographers were commissioned to create detailed maps. Vague, overlapping territories became clearly demarcated countries with fixed borders. With these lines on a map came a new desire for control. Rulers wanted to know who was living in their lands, who was entering, who was leaving. This information was essential for taxation, military conscription, internal security. The state developed a bureaucratic interest in its population. Movement across these new borders was no longer casual. It became state policy. Control of movement became a fundamental expression of sovereignty. The stranger was no longer just a traveler, but a foreigner. It was during this era that the word passport entered the lexicon. From the French passer, to pass, and port, a port or gate. The term meant a document granting permission to pass through city gates or seaports. Early passports were simple, handwritten notes describing the bearer's appearance, hair color, eye color, notable scars, and the purpose of their journey. They managed the flow of people, especially at key entry points. This control was not only about keeping foreigners out, but keeping subjects in. Some rulers feared losing skilled laborers. Others wanted to stop dissidents fleeing. Internal passports forced tracking of movement, allowing monarchs to enforce their will. The travel document moved from a letter of safe passage to an instrument of population management and state control, reshaping human mobility. The Great War: how conflict forged the modern passport. For all the incremental changes over centuries, it was the cataclysm of the First World War that truly created the modern passport system. Before 1914, one could still travel across most of Europe with minimal documentation. The outbreak of war changed everything, almost overnight. Suddenly, every nation viewed every other nation with suspicion. The free movement of people became a direct threat to national security. As vast armies mobilized and trench lines were dug, countries slammed their borders shut. The primary fear was espionage. A spy could easily travel disguised: a tourist, a businessman, a refugee. To combat this threat, governments urgently needed a reliable way to identify every single person crossing their frontiers. The casual, ad hoc system of letters and occasional checks was no longer sufficient. A systematic, mandatory, and verifiable form of identification became a wartime necessity. Countries across Europe and North America rapidly introduced laws requiring all travelers, including their own citizens, to carry a passport. These were no longer simple letters, but standardized booklets, often containing a photograph of the bearer, a recent innovation that made identification far more secure. The photograph tied the document irrevocably to a single individual. Officials could now compare a face to a picture, a name to a list. The passport became a critical tool in the arsenal of modern warfare. Even after the armistice was signed in 1918, these emergency measures did not disappear. The world had changed. The intense nationalism and suspicion fostered by the war lingered. Governments had discovered the utility of a comprehensive passport system for security, immigration, labor, and the spread of political ideologies. The temporary wartime necessity hardened into a permanent feature. The age of casual travel was over. The age of the passport had truly begun. In the aftermath of the Great War, the world was left with a chaotic patchwork of different passport rules and designs. Each country had its own format, its own regulations, and its own bureaucratic quirks. This lack of standardization created immense confusion and delays for international travelers, hindering the recovery of global trade and diplomacy. It was clear there needed to be common rules. The newly formed League of Nations took up this challenge. In 1920, it held the Paris Conference on Passports and Customs Formalities and Through Tickets. Representatives from 22 nations created a framework for a uniform international passport. They made a series of recommendations that would define the passport for the next century. They proposed a standard size and layout, a 32-page booklet, with the first pages reserved for the bearer's personal details and photograph. passports should be valid at least 2 years, and written in the national language as well as in French. While these were only recommendations, most countries gradually adopted them. The result was the recognizable passport booklet we know today. This period also saw the formalization of the visa system, an endorsement placed within a passport, granting permission to enter for a specific purpose and duration. It acts as a second layer of control. First, a citizen must obtain a passport from their own country. Then, they must apply for a visa from the country they wish to visit. Border inspections became more rigorous, transforming international travel into a highly regulated process. Standardization made border crossings more efficient and predictable. An official in one country could now easily find the relevant information in a passport from another. The creation of a global passport system did not create a level playing field for travelers. In fact, it codified and reinforced a global hierarchy of mobility. Today, the passport you hold is one of the single most powerful determinants of your freedom of movement. Not all passports are created equal. Some grant holders access to over 190 countries without applying for a visa in advance. Others provide access to fewer than 40. This disparity is often called the passport lottery. The power of a passport is determined by international relations, stable governments, strong economies, positive diplomatic ties. Citizens of countries like Japan, Singapore, Germany can often just book a flight. Their passport is a key that opens most of the world's doors. Conversely, citizens from countries affected by political instability, conflict, economic sanctions face far less powerful passports. For them, travel is difficult, expensive, and often humiliating. They must apply months in advance, provide extensive documentation, attend interviews, pay high fees, with no guarantee. A business trip, a family visit can become a bureaucratic ordeal. The passport acts not as a key, but as a cage, limiting opportunities and worldview. This inequality shapes global flows of talent, investment, and culture. A student may be unable to attend a top university. An entrepreneur may miss a crucial conference. A family may be unable to flee danger. The passport has become an instrument of global inequality, sorting people into tiers of freedom based on the accident of their birth. The passport, an object rooted in paper and ink, is now undergoing its most significant transformation since the inclusion of the photograph. The photograph changed everything. Now it's happening again. We are moving into the era of the digital and biometric passport. For the past 2 decades, many countries have been issuing e-passports. These look like traditional booklets, but they contain a hidden microprocessor chip. This tiny chip stores the same information printed on the passport's data page, including a high-resolution digital copy of the bearer's photograph. This technology enhances security. The chip's data is digitally signed, making it extremely difficult to forge or alter. At border control, the chip can be scanned and the information cross-referenced with the printed data. More advanced systems use this chip to automate the border crossing process. Automated gates, or e-gates, use a camera to capture a live image of the traveler's face. Facial recognition software then compares this live image to the digital photo stored on the passport's chip. If they match, the gate opens. This technological shift is pushing us toward an even more radical future, the fully digital ID. Several countries are already experimenting with digital travel credentials stored securely on a smartphone. The idea is that a physical booklet may one day become obsolete. A traveler could simply present their phone, with their identity verified through biometrics like a fingerprint or a face scan. This could make travel faster, more convenient, and potentially even more secure. However, this digital frontier raises critical new questions. The centralization of sensitive biometric data brings significant privacy concerns. Who owns this data? How is it protected from hackers or misuse by governments? What happens if there is an error in the system and a legitimate traveler is wrongly denied entry? As we replace the physical document with intangible data, we must navigate a complex balance. The goal is to enhance security and convenience without sacrificing the fundamental rights and freedoms that the passport is meant to represent. Behind the grand history of states, laws, and technologies are the individual human stories. The passport is never just an abstract concept. It is a deeply personal object that shapes lives in profound ways. Think of the scholar in the 1930s, whose passport, stamped with the right visa, was a ticket out of a Europe descending into darkness. That small book was not just paper, it was a lifeline, the difference between survival and persecution. Consider the modern student from a developing nation holding an acceptance letter to a foreign university. Their dream hinges on a successful visa interview. The passport in their hand represents hope, ambition, and the chance for a different future. The stamp of approval is a gateway to knowledge and opportunity. A denial, however, can feel like a judgment not just on their application, but on their entire country's standing in the world. The document becomes a vessel for their aspirations and their anxieties. Then there is the story of the refugee. For someone fleeing conflict or disaster, the lack of a passport or holding one from a collapsed state can be a catastrophic barrier. They arrive at a border not as a tourist or a business traveler, but as a person seeking safety. In these moments, the bureaucratic logic of the passport system can seem cruel and unyielding. The document, or lack thereof, can mean the difference between finding sanctuary and being turned back toward danger. And what of the simple tourist, whose passport is filled with stamps from around the globe? Each stamp is a memory: a market in Marrakech, a temple in Kyoto, a mountain in Peru. The passport becomes a personal archive, a tangible record of a life of exploration and connection. It is a storybook of places seen and cultures experienced. In these countless human experiences of hope, fear, opportunity, and memory, we find the true meaning of the passport. It is far more than a tool of the state. It is a map of individual lives. The journey of the passport has been a long one. It has evolved from a handwritten letter of safe conduct for a chosen few into a biometric document required of billions. Our story mirrors that evolution, from small local communities to a complex, interconnected, and deeply divided global society. It's a narrative about our quest for security and our desire for freedom of movement. The passport sits at the intersection of those impulses. Today, this small book is a paradox, a symbol of global citizenship, a tool that lets us cross oceans, a way to connect with humanity in all its diversity. Yet it also excludes, sorts people into hierarchies, and restricts access to the world it promises. It is a key, and it is a lock. Its power is neutral. How we wield it matters. As we stand on the cusp of digital identity, the same questions remain. Will new tech make a more open, equitable world? Or will it enable new surveillance and control, creating digital borders harder to cross than physical ones? The future of the passport is the future of how we define ourselves, our communities, and our relationship to the wider world. The story is not over. The passport keeps evolving with our priorities and technologies, from a wax seal on a royal scroll to a facial scan at an automated gate. The aim has always been to answer, who are you, and where are you permitted to go? The final chapter is unwritten. It will be shaped by our collective choices. A simple book, a map of who we are, a key to where we may go.